of what climate change is all about, the consequences, and the possible means of reducing or curbing the effects of climate change. How will they begin to engineer themselves or put themselves in positions to take care of these things? So educating the people is one way to remedy this problem. People should be made to know the issues bordering climate change. They should be made to know the dangers, the menace that could result from this climate change, so that they will be able, to restrict themselves from certain activities that would encourage climate change within the environment. Now, another way is population reduction. The higher the population, the higher the tendency for activities leading to emission of these gases and other harmful substances into the environment, which encourages climate change. So, if we have reduction in population, in a way we'll be able to, reduce the number of the amount of gases sent or released into the atmosphere, and in a way as well we could also control, the activities of man, which in turn leads to climate change. So the fewer the population, the lesser would be the release of gases and other substances into the atmosphere or through human activities. Another way to solve this problem is encouraging the use of gas-driven cars and generators. Such cars, and generators will reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that is being, released or emitted into the atmosphere. Legislation is another way. Now, human activity should be checked thoroughly, and periodically by the government or government agencies concerned. And this could be done by enacting laws, that will ban certain activities like illegal felling down of trees or lumbering activities, and bush burning, gas flaring, and the likes. These are all activities that rapidly encourages climate change. When we have a law that bans most of these activities, I think that would go a long way to reducing, if not, completely taking care of the issue of climate change. So let's look at the following questions. Number one is that, what do you understand by the term climate change? 1A, what do you understand by the term climate change? 1B, what do you understand by the term global warming? Let's answer question 1 first. Climate change. Climate change has to do with a long-term shift in the weather conditions, identified by changes in temperature, precipitation, winds, and other indicators. In an environment where over time we have noticed and been conversant with the duration of, let me use for instance, rainfall. We say that rainfall begins usually, let's say a dry or wet season begins, for instance, from, let's say, from March, early March to maybe October or thereabout. And dry season takes over from there the next month. And suddenly we begin to observe that there has been a change in this pattern, such that rain begins to fall in periods where hitherto we used to have dry season. And this shift in these weather conditions, happens for a long time. That's to say, that's an indication of the fact that there have been a shift or a change in the condition. And that's what we are experiencing in most parts of the world now. We cannot really say that oh, look at this is wet season, you find rain falling in wet seasons or dry seasons, and questions are beginning to be raised. These are all as a result of distortion in the natural state of the environment due to human activities and other factors responsible. So that is what we call climate change. The B part of number 1 question talks about global warming. Various man's activities such as bush burning, gas flaring, and burning of fossil fuel, when released into the environment, can cause unnecessary heating of the environment. And this is due to the fact that the ozone layer is being depleted, and as such we begin to experience or to feel the direct ray of the sun. This leads to what we call global warming, and it affects virtually every part of the world as a result of man's activities. Let's look at another question. Question 2. Question 2 says, explain 4 causes of an effect of climate change. Now, what are those things we do that could possibly lead to climate change? And when there is occurrence of climate change, what are the effects or the impact felt? Now, one of the causes of climate change, as a way of answering question 2, is the release of harmful gases, gas flaring into the atmosphere. And what these things do is that they tend to deplete the thin layer within the atmosphere that serves as a shield, and as such giving rise to direct rays of the sun reaching the earth. Another way or another cause of climate change is greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect, is the concentration of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And when these gases are concentrated in the atmosphere, it enhances greenhouse effect, and this warms the planet to a level that has never been experienced in the history of human civilization. We talked about ozone layer depletion. That is another cause of climate change. And volcanic activities could also lead to climate change. When there is an eruption, various substances and gases are being released into the environment, which leads to changes in the area. Increase in population could also cause climate change. Now, the higher the population, the higher the tendency for the environment to be disturbed by various activities of man, thus leading to climate change. Now, deforestation is also a cause of climate change. When there is deliberate, or when people deliberately and indiscriminately fell down trees in an environment, this leads to depletion in oxygen, leading to concentration of carbon dioxide in that environment, which also enhances concentration of greenhouse gases, which at the end of the day causes climate change. Gas flaring is also a cause of climate change. When there is continuous flaring of gases, especially from petroleum products, this gives rise to different gases like carbon dioxide and other dangerous gases released into the atmosphere, which in turn causes climate change. Now, the effects of climate change are melting of the ice caps due to global warming. The ice cap begin to melt, and thus increasing the sea level. This could lead to flooding and a very major threat to low-lying areas. Climate change could also lead to high rainfall. Climate change as well can cause desertification as well as emergence of new diseases. Question 3 says, explain 5 ways to remedy the effects of climate change. Having identified most of these effects, how do we remedy them? That's what the question talks about. One, we need a stable government or legislation or a law that will ban some activities usually carried out by man or by men which affects the environment leading to climate change, such as burning of bush, gas flaring, and indiscriminate felling of trees. Now, we need to encourage the use of gas-driven cars. These cars reduce the amount of carbon that is being generated and released into the atmosphere. We also need to educate the people about the issues of climate change, how they can be affected and how they can avoid most of these things. We need also to encourage reforestation. It has to do with planting of trees. This will enhance or will increase the amount of oxygen available and in turn purifies the environment. So by this we have been able to explain 5 ways in which we can remedy the effects of climate change in our environment. Now let us consider the Economic Community of West African States, commonly known as ECOWAS. Now, ECOWAS was founded as a result of a treaty called the Lagos Treaty, formally establishing ECOWAS on May 28, 1975 in Lagos. The treaty called Lagos Treaty, formally brought into existence ECOWAS, which was signed on May 28, 1975 by 15 West African states. However, Guinea-Bissau later joined to make ECOWAS 16 countries. The idea behind the establishment of ECOWAS was conceived by 2 heads of states. The head of state